Hello again, guys. We are back with another past paper with Olivia. Okay, so today we are doing an economics iGCSE paper. We're doing paper 1, multiple choice, and these are all the details. So we're doing the MayJune 2015 paper. Okay, is everyone ready to get started? Let's go. Okay, question number 1. The following are 4 ways factors of production are used. What is likely to require the greatest use of the factor? Enterprise. Okay, remember enterprise is bringing all of the factors of production together. Okay, so someone is bringing all of the factors of production together. That is enterprise, taking a risk, okay, to start some sort of enterprise. Okay, some sort of business that brings land, labor, and capital together. Okay, so a carpenter making wooden articles in his leisure time for sale at a monthly market. Okay, a corn farmer negotiating with other farmers to hire expensive machinery, food shop owner sometimes selling flowers in the shop, and a householder harvesting vegetables grown at home. Okay, so we can see that pretty much all of these are people who are kind of starting their own business. However, the question asks, and this is where your English comes in very handy with these multiple choice questions, it is a skill in itself, which is likely to require the greatest use of the factor enterprise. Okay, so if we compare all of these, we've got to think which one of these is making the most effort to bring factors of production together. Okay, carpenter making wooden articles in his leisure time for sale at a monthly market. Okay, yeah, enterprise, but not putting his full effort into it, into creating his business. A corn farmer negotiating with other farmers to hire expensive machinery. Okay, there's negotiations going on. There is capital in this scenario. Okay, he's a farmer, so there's land in this scenario. Okay, yeah, there's no specific mention of workers who are working on his farm, but that's bringing together a lot of resources. A food shop owner sometimes selling flowers in the shop. Okay, similar to option A. A householder harvesting vegetables grown at home. Okay, we don't really know what the householder is doing with those vegetables. Might be eating them him or herself. So B would be the correct answer in this situation. The corn farmer is making the greatest use of the factor enterprise. Question 2. To help reduce the price of oil, new supplies are needed. However, in 2013, objectors opposed attempts to explore new sites because of the environmental damage the exploration might cause. How does this illustrate the basic economic problem? Okay, guys, when you see this, your mind needs to go straight to the fact that the basic economic problem is limited resources and unlimited wants. Limited wants. Okay. You shouldn't even need to go through all of the options, even for this question. Your answer should just straight away be A. Oil is a limited resource. Okay, that is the way that this illustrates the basic economic problem. Okay. It has nothing to do with the price of oil. It has nothing to do with the fact that exploration involves demand and supply, and it has nothing to do with external costs. Basic economic problem simply has to do with limited resources and unlimited wants. Okay, question number 3. With a given level of resources, an economy that can produce food or computers is at point Q on its PPC. Population growth means more resources need to be allocated to food production. Okay, at which point in the short term will the economy be in the diagram? All right, so we got 4 options here, A, B, C, or D. We can immediately eliminate A and D. Okay, there has been no indication that we've become less efficient as an economy, therefore moving inside our curve. So our point is not going to be A. And again, there's no indication that we are moving outside our curve. So we're not going to move to D. Okay. Also, if you look at those 2 points, if you don't want to eliminate it like that, you can see that both A and D have not increased the production of food. Okay, A is at the same level as Q, so it's producing the same amount of food, and D is lower. Okay, so if we move to point D, we'd be producing less food. Okay, so we need to find the point basically that would produce a higher quantity of food or have a higher point on our y-axis, and the only option there is B. C is obviously eliminated because it has a lower point of food than point Q. So the option, or the answer rather, is B. Okie dokes, question number 4. A person makes sandwiches at home for 5 hours a day. She makes 20 sandwiches per hour and she sells each sandwich for $2 each. What is the opportunity cost if she takes a holiday on a working day? Okay, so opportunity cost, mine should go straight to next best alternative, foregone. Okay, what is she giving up by taking a holiday on a working day? Okay, so she makes 20 sandwiches per hour and she works for 5 hours a day. So that's 100 sandwiches, okay, per day. We don't know how many sandwiches she sells, so it wouldn't be appropriate for us to discuss the dollar amounts, okay? So we have to discuss it in terms of sandwiches, okay? So the opportunity cost, what she is losing, or essentially what she's not going to be doing if she takes the holiday is 100 sandwiches. Okay, she's not going to have 100 sandwiches if she goes on holiday for a working day. Okay, she's giving up the fact that she's making 100 sandwiches. So the answer is D. Okay, question 5. What can be found in a mixed economy but not in a market economy? Okay, so again, your mind should go to definition. So a market economy is no government or minimal government or no government intervention. Okay, and a mixed economy is a little bit of both. Okay, private and public. Okay, so a national economic development plan, an unequal distribution of income and wealth, the operation of the price mechanism, private ownership of factors of production. Okay, so already we should be able to eliminate D, the private ownership of factors of production. That is found in a market economy, definitely. The operation of the price mechanism, definitely found in a market economy. It operates off of supply and demand, which is your price mechanism. So it's not C. An unequal distribution of income and wealth. That is more so seen in a market economy. If you don't have a government to regulate income distribution, it's more likely that you're going to see unequal distribution of income and wealth. So that usually is found in a market economy. So we can eliminate B, leaving us with answer A. So we've done this by process of elimination, which is completely fine. If you don't know what a national economic development plan is, that would probably be the best way. But a national economic development plan is a document that is created by the government of a country, okay? So if you knew that, then you could have probably just gone straight to A, but it might be something that not everyone would know what it is, okay? Cool, so the answer for number 5 will be A. Cool, question number 6. Newspapers recently reported there had been a decrease in the demand for beef and that its price per kilogram had increased. From the initial equilibrium point X, which point in the diagram illustrates the new market equilibrium? Okay, so let's go through this again and work through it step by step whilst shifting the demand or supply curve. So newspapers recently reported there had been a decrease in demand for beef. Okay, we're at point X, decrease in demand, shifting the demand curve to the left. Okay, so we're on D2 at this point. Okay. And that its price per kilogram had increased. Okay, that's our next point. So quite simply, if we've moved there, okay, let's just actually take this arrow away. So we've moved from X to that middle point of A and D, and that its price per kilogram had increased. So that should straight away take us to point A. Okay, this is a bit of a weird one, but it works still if you work through it step by step. Okay, on to question 7. The diagram shows the market for fresh fish in the Caribbean with equilibrium point X. Over here, a new type of fishing boat increases production, which reduces costs. Which point represents the new equilibrium? Okay, so again, similar to the last question, we're going to work step by step, except there's only one step involved here. There's only one movement, okay? So they've given us that information. A new type of fishing boat increases production, which reduces costs, okay? Your mind should go straight to the fact that that reduces costs is a movement of the supply curve. When producers reduce their costs, it becomes cheaper for them to produce goods, okay? So supply should increase. Okay, so the supply curve will shift to the right to S2. Since that's the only movement, we'll move straight from point X to point D, and that will be your answer. Okay, question 8. A large supermarket applied to build on land which was in an area of natural beauty. The local government allowed the building, even though the natural beauty of the area would be lost, because many jobs would be created and much needed income would be brought to the local community. Which economic ideas cannot be found in the above statement? Okay, let's go through each of these. A, external cost. Okay, hopefully you would have noticed that the external cost would be the natural beauty of the area would be lost. Okay, over here. That's your external cost. It's affecting third parties and it's negative. Okay, so we can actually immediately eliminate that. Don't even need to regard private enterprise. Free market and the conservation of resources. Okay, so free market means there's minimal government intervention. Okay, well, there's government here, so that can't be found in the above statement. And the conservation of resources. Okay, we are not conserving resources in this case. We are building in an area of natural beauty, and we are using resources, okay, to build the building. Okay, so neither one of those can be found in the above statement. So B is actually our answer here. Let's go through the others. Opportunity cost and improved standards of living. Okay, opportunity cost would be the fact that this area of natural beauty could be used for another purpose. There is always an opportunity cost. There is a choice that's going to be made. Okay, so there is a next best alternative that will be foregone. Okay, and improved standards of living. Okay, so let's see, many jobs would be created that would improve standards of living. Okay, public sector. Okay, well, we just saw that the government is involved. That's the public sector, so that is mentioned. And an external benefit. External benefit would be the jobs that would be created. It's providing a benefit for third parties, okay, who are not involved with the supermarket. Okay, so we've done it by process of elimination, and also we've proved that B is correct. Question 9. Cigarettes have been used as money in exceptional circumstances. What is the most likely reason that they are not acceptable as money in normal circumstances? Okay. They lack durability, intrinsic value, portability, uniformity. Okay, let's go through each of these. I'm going to go backwards. Don't know if you would be able to guess why. Okay, so cigarettes lack uniformity. Right. This is not 100% true. Okay, cigarettes are uniform, most of them. Okay, you can get different types of tobacco, but for the most part, they are quite uniform. Lack portability, so that's how easily they are able to be carried around. So they're quite small, they're quite light, they are easily portable. Okay, so those two are out. Cigarettes lack intrinsic value. Okay, intrinsic value means that they have a value to them. Well, since people want them and since they are made of tobacco and paper and filters, they do have an intrinsic value. They can be valued. Okay, so that one is out. Cigarettes lack durability. Yes, this is true. If you get them wet, they get damaged. They're easily breakable. Okay, if you step on them, they're damaged. If they're wet, they're damaged. So this is the most likely reason out of all of these that they are not acceptable as money in normal circumstances. Okay, question 10. The table shows a country's trade union membership in millions between 2008 and 2011. Give us a table. What can be concluded about the country's trade union membership in the period 2008 to 11? Trade unions had least members in 2010. Okay, well, we're going to have to add all of these together. Okay, so they said trade unions. They're not differentiating between trade unions in the private sector versus the public sector. They just mean collectively, so in both sectors. So we're going to have to go ahead and add all of these together so that we can compare. So 2008 was 12 million, 2009 was 10.8, 2010 was 11.1, and 2011 was 10.5. Okay, so now we can compare all of the years. So trade unions had least members in 2010. Well, that's 11.1. We can see that 2009 and 11 had less, so it's not true. Trade unions had most members in 2011. Not true. Most members was in 2008. Trade union membership fell between 2008 and 2009. That's true. Okay. And trade union membership rose between 2009 and 11. That is incorrect. It fell. Okay, so we were just checking with the last one to make sure that nothing was wrong with the question. But yeah, our answer would be C. Okay, 11. A bus driver works longer hours if the wage rate increases. As his earnings increase, okay, there reaches a point where he prefers more leisure to work. Okay, so we're going to have to go through each of these graphs, okay, A, B, C, and D, to figure out which one is true for this situation. Okay, so if we have a look at A, he is working longer hours as his wage rate increases. It is a consistent upward trend, okay? There's been no indication that once he reaches a point, he works less hours, okay? So when the question says he prefers more leisure to work, that means his working hours decrease, okay? So it's not A because that's no indication of that. B, okay, we can see that he is working more as his wages go up, and then it gets to a point over here that when he works over a certain amount of hours, so as his wages increase from that point, his wage rate decreases. Okay, that's weird and not true, and it does not match this scenario. Okay, his doesn't say that his wage rate decreases as he works longer hours, so it's not B. Okay, question C, same situation. So as his wage rate increases, he works longer hours. We're getting to a point over here that his wage rate is still increasing, but his working hours are decreasing. Okay, this one matches. As his earnings increase, there reaches a point where he prefers more leisure to work, i.e. he's working less hours. So that's the point, that as his wages are increasing past that point, he's working less hours. Our answer is C. Let's just go through what D means. So this is basically saying no matter what happens to his wage rate, increases or decreases, he's working the same amount of hours. You can see that his working hours are staying static at that point over there. Okay, so it's not D either. Cool. Question 12. In 2013, a German company that manufactured medicines bought a UK company that ran a chain of pharmacies that sold medicines. What term best describes this takeover? Okay, so if we remember, let's draw. Okay, so we've got primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary. This is how we're going to differentiate between these. Okay, so a conglomerate, that is when two different companies in two different industries, in two different sectors, are merging together or come together. Okay. In this case, we've got a manufacturer, that would be secondary sector, and a chain of pharmacies, so that would be tertiary sector, because they're providing a service, okay, tertiary sector. But they are both in the same industry, in the medical industry, so it cannot be a conglomerate, so A is out of the question. A horizontal merger is one in which two companies in the same industry and the same sector are merging together, okay? We've just shown that we have a secondary sector company and a tertiary sector company that are merging together, so it cannot be horizontal because they're in different sectors. Vertical integration, so it must be one of these, vertical integration. Okay, so vertical integration, same industry, different sectors. Okay. Vertical integration backwards. Okay, so if we look here, any of these arrows indicate a vertical integration backwards. So it's either a secondary sector company merging with a primary, or a tertiary merging with a secondary, or even tertiary merging with a primary. We've got a manufacturing, so secondary sector company, merging with a tertiary, or it's taking over a tertiary. So they're moving forward, okay? Vertical integration forwards. Okay, 13. When is a firm considered more capital intensive than another firm? Okay, capital intensive means that their ratio of machines to workers is high. That means they have a lot of machines compared to the amount of workers that they have. Okay, so we can straight away go to answer A. When it has a lower ratio of workers to machines than the other firm. Correct. That means the same as when it has a higher ratio of machines to workers than the other firm. It has to do with ratios. It doesn't matter how many workers they have compared to the other firm, okay? Because they might have only workers and no machines. It doesn't matter if they have less workers. They may have simply only workers. Same for D, okay, when it has more machines than the other firm. No, okay, because they might have more machines than the other firm, but they could even have a much, much, much greater labor force, okay? When it has a higher variable cost than the other firm, that just hasn't got anything to do with capital intensive, okay? Cool, so our answer for number 13 is A. Okay, 14. In 2009, Gulf Airlines, which was making a loss, stated it would reduce the number of new aircraft on order. If it did this, which of its costs would directly be affected? Okay. Remember, fixed costs are those that do not fluctuate with the amount of output that you have. The fixed costs are there to stay. Okay, think about rent. You are going to pay rent regardless of whether you're producing 0 items or 1,000,000 items. You're still going to pay rent. Marginal costs is the change in cost as we increase our units of output. It's not necessarily specified in the syllabus, okay, but it's how much your costs increase as you increase your output. Okay, opportunity costs, next best alternative foregone, and variable costs are the costs that directly increase as your output increases. Okay, so if it reduces the number of new aircraft on order, well, aircraft on order, it doesn't really matter how many seats you're selling, that cost is still going to be there. Okay, so if it reduces the number of new aircraft on order, that is going to affect the fixed costs of Gulf Airlines. So the answer would be A. Okay, 15. The diagram shows the costs of a firm. What is the firm's total variable cost at an output of 100 units? Okay, this graph should be very familiar to you, and you should know exactly what each of these lines represent. Okay, so we've got our axes over there. This flat line, constant cost as your output increases. So like I just explained in the previous question, that's your fixed costs. This bottom line, this bottom diagonal line are your variable costs. So directly increasing as you increase your output. And this top line is your total costs. Okay, so we're going to be looking at our variable cost line at an output of 100 units. So we're going to just follow that line up to that point, and we can see that it is 50,000. D. All right, 16. A government lowers the rate of interest. Who is most likely to be disadvantaged by this policy? Okay, when we lower the interest rate, this is good for borrowers because it is now cheaper to borrow money. They're going to pay less interest on the debt that they accumulate. Okay, so when we reduce interest, better for borrowers. So if you're a house buyer, you're most likely taking out a mortgage, so it's going to benefit you. If you're a manufacturer, you might be taking out a loan from the bank. Okay, if you take out a loan from the bank, you're going to pay interest, which is lower. That's good. So it's not going to be manufacturers. Retailers, similar situation. Okay, so they might take out a loan from the bank. So a lower interest rate is going to allow them to pay less. By process of elimination, the answer is D, which is savers. But if you wanted another way around it, if you didn't want to do elimination, if you are a saver, you're putting your money into a bank and earning interest on the money that you've saved. If the government lowers the rate of interest, you are going to be earning less interest, which is obviously not a good thing. Okay, so the answer would be D. Okay, 17. Which is a supply-side policy that would increase output in the long run? Okay, so let's go through these one by one. So, an increase in benefit payments. Okay, this is going to encourage people to stay at home. Okay, if we increase benefit payments, people are going to rather stay at home earning benefits than going out and getting a job and contributing to the labour force. So that is probably going to decrease output in the long run. An increase in places at training colleges. Okay, if people are more trained and study more, that means they're going to be a more efficient part of the workforce. Okay, if you have more efficient workers, they are producing more per hour. Okay, so that would increase output in the long run. Okay, let's look at the other two, even though we have the answer. An increase in the rate of income tax. Okay, again, this is giving people the incentive, or disincentive rather, to work. They don't want to work if the rate of income tax is high. Why should I be earning money and giving so much of a percent to the government? Okay, so that's reducing the amount of people who want to join the labour force. And an increase in the rate of tax employers pay. Okay, if you think in a business mind and you have to pay more tax for your employees, you are less likely to hire employees. Okay, if you have a lower labour force, you're most likely going to produce less. So that will decrease your output in the long run. Okay, so our answer is B. Okay, 18. Russia exports wheat. In 2010, a bad harvest led the Russian government to prevent the export of wheat to ensure enough supplies were kept for domestic use. Okay, so basically what happened here is that there was a bad harvest. They ran out of wheat. Okay, so they wanted to stop Russia exporting the wheat to other countries to benefit other countries, and they wanted to keep it for themselves. Okay, what was the most likely outcome of the government's action? Okay, this is a weird question. Okay, might be difficult to get to the answer. Prices were fixed by the wheat producers. Okay, we don't really know, okay, what could have happened, but there's no direct information here that would tell us that prices would be fixed by the wheat producers. Okay, so the people producing wheat, there's no reason for them to fix the prices. Okay, let's eliminate that one. The amount produced was determined by the government. Okay, no, right? The government wants to produce as much as possible. Okay, they're not determining how much wheat is being produced. Okay, so we can immediately eliminate that one. The price of wheat abroad fell. Okay, so we're dealing with Russia, we're dealing with a bad harvest in Russia, we're dealing with Russian policies. It has nothing to do with any of the prices of wheat abroad. Okay, so we can eliminate C, which leaves us with D. There was a redistribution of domestic production. Okay, if you can separate in your mind farmers that are producing wheat specifically for export and farmers producing wheat specifically for domestic consumption, there would have been some sort of redistribution of domestic production. Okay, the wheat farmers would have rearranged something because now there's less exports and more domestic consumption. Okay, so the farmers would have had to rearrange something to make that possible. Okay, so the answer for 18 would be D. Okay, 19. The government reduces the rate of income tax and increases the rate of tax on producers from the initial equilibrium point X, which letter indicates the new equilibrium point in the market. Okay, another one of these two-step demand and supply questions. So the government reduces the rate of income tax. Okay, you should immediately know that if you reduce the rate of income tax for consumers, that increases our disposable income, and it is going to shift our demand curve to the right. Okay, so we move from point X to the middle of point B and C, and increases the rate of tax on producers. Okay, we spoke about it a bit earlier. If you increase the rate of tax on producers, this is essentially increasing the cost for producers. So that is going to decrease supply in the economy. So it's going to shift the supply curve to the left. We will then be left at point B. Okay, 20. What is most likely to cause economic growth? Okay, let's just go through these. A better educated workforce, a reduction in the right to own property, decreased wages, higher taxation. Okay, quite easily reading all of these, the only positive one out of them would be A. A better educated workforce is going to cause economic growth. We are increasing the quality of our labour force, essentially shifting our PPC outwards, okay? And that will give us economic growth, okay? All of the others are likely to lead to the opposite. Okay, 21. A worker earns $250 each week, which leaves a disposable income of $175. What will affect the real value of the worker's $250 earned income? Okay, when we see real, okay, we're thinking about how inflation is affecting our earnings, okay? Real income is how many goods we can buy for our set salary, okay? So the only thing that would affect the real value of the worker's earned income is anything to do with the price level, okay? So a change in the price level will affect the real value of the worker's earned income, okay? If the price level increases, the real value of the $250 will decrease because we can now buy less goods for our salary or with our salary, Okay, a decrease in the price level, we can buy more goods. Okay, that is what real income is. Okay, 22. The table shows the unemployment rate in 3 developed economies in June 2013. Table. What is the main cause of high rates of unemployment in developed economies in periods of recession? Okay, I think they just gave us that table to throw us off. Okay, so these could potentially all cause unemployment. However, we should know from our different types of unemployment, cyclical, frictional, all of the rest, when we're in a recession, or the word recession should immediately link us with cyclical unemployment, okay? Cyclical unemployment is when there are general decreases in the total demand in an economy, okay? If less people are demanding less goods, that means less workers are needed to produce goods, okay? Because people don't want goods anymore. They're saving their money or they can't afford it, okay? So people are going to be laid off because they're not needed anymore to produce that amount of goods. Okay, so decreases in total demand would be our answer here. Okay, question 23. From 2012 to 13, European economies experienced weak economic growth. Based on the information on GDP, industrial production, and unemployment in the table, which economy performed the worst? Okay, so we've got percentage change in GDP, percentage change in industrial production, and percentage change in unemployment. So the economy that performed worse, we would expect to see the negative GDP change, okay, negative change in industrial production, and positive change in unemployment, meaning unemployment has increased. Okay, so if we look through these and you analyze these numbers, you can actually see that Italy has the lowest GDP change. Okay, so it's performed worst in the GDP section. It's performed worst in the industrial production section and worst in the unemployment section. Okay, so Italy's done worst out of all of these in over all 3 sections. So we can clearly go to answer C. All right, question 24. What is not a reason why the average size of families is likely to be greater in developing countries than in developed countries? Okay. What is not a reason why families are greater, okay, in developing countries? Children offer the prospect of security in old age. Okay, that is a reason why the families are greater. Okay, they have more children so that the parents are looked after in their old age. Okay, government childcare support is widely available. Okay, well, government childcare support is not widely available in developing countries. Okay, so that is not a reason why the families are likely to be greater in developing countries. So we know our answer is B, simply because there's no limited childcare support in developing countries. Let's go through the others. Means of birth control are less available and more expensive. Okay, that is a reason why families are greater. Okay, less birth control means more children. Women are less likely to be part of the workforce. Okay, that is true. Okay, the families are going to be greater in size because they're going to have children until they have sons. Okay, they want their sons to be able to look after them. Okay, so that is a reason why families are greater. Okay, our answer for 24 is B. Okay, 25. The table shows the proportion of GDP produced by each sector of production in 3 fictitious countries. What can be concluded from the table? Okay, so we've got primary, secondary, and tertiary. We should know that a more developed economy is going to have a bigger percentage of the GDP, and the primary sector is going to have a lower percentage of GDP. Okay, so Farland, medium-sized primary sector, high tertiary sector compared to the others, that has the highest. Okay. Highland has the lowest primary sector, middle, tertiary sector, quite a high secondary sector, and lowland has the highest primary sector, small secondary sector, and a middle or medium tertiary sector. Okay, so in an exam question, they should make it super clear on which one's which. Okay, they would make it that the highest developed or the most developed country will have the lowest primary sector and the highest tertiary sector out of all three. So the answer to this is actually that it is uncertain which is the most developed economy. Okay. Cool. 26. In rural areas in developing countries, farmers grow food for their own consumption. Why might this mean that the GDP is a weak measure of the standard of living in those countries? Okay, so they're growing food for their own consumption. So they grow the food and then eat it. Okay, the food grown is not exported. Well, items don't need to be exported to measure GDP, so that's not true. The GDP does not include agricultural production. Absolutely not true. GDP does include agricultural production. The GDP only refers to the public sector. No. It refers to the public and private sector. By elimination, we get to D. The value of the food is unknown. And this is simply true because the value of the food would never be determined. They're not selling the food. They are simply eating it. Okay? So they grow it and it's gone. So it never becomes part of the GDP calculation. Okay, so D is our answer for 26. All right, 27. Just had to zoom out a bit so that I can fit everything on one page. The charts show the population structure of a country in 1960 and 2010. Okay, so we're traveling over time with these two graphs. You should know how to read population pyramids. So during this period, 1960 to 2010, how did the birth and death rates change? Okay, well, we're going to compare the youth. Okay, let's compare a little bit more. So in 1960 compared to 2010, we can see that in 1960 there were a lot more children, okay, than in 2010. So over this period, we can determine that birth rates fell, okay, because there are less children in 2010. So we can immediately eliminate C and D. And death rates, well, how many old people are there? Okay, in 1960, few old people, and you can see that to 2010, it's grown. The number of elderly has grown. So we would assume that less people are dying, okay, because there's more older people. So A would be our answer. Birth rates and death rates have fallen during this period. Okay, 28. What is an advantage of international specialization? Okay, so international specialization, remember, that's when countries specialize in producing a certain good compared to other countries. Okay, so an advantage. All right, choice is limited. Well, straight away, that is a disadvantage. If choice is limited, that's not a good thing. Countries become over-dependent on each other. Over-dependence is, again, a disadvantage generally. So that's not true. Resources are used more efficiently. This is true. If you specialize, you use your resources more efficiently. Okay, you are better at doing your job and using every factor of production more efficiently. So that is an advantage of international specialization. And the final one is that transport costs are decreased. Okay, this is an advantage, but it's not necessarily true. We still need to transport goods. We need to export them. We still need to use transport. So international specialization doesn't necessarily reduce transport costs. All right, 29. Skin creams preventing sunburn made in the EU are more effective than those made in the US. US tourists stock up on the creams when visiting Europe. Such creams are banned from production in the US because of the chemicals in them. in 2013, negotiations began to remove this ban in order to allow production in the US. How is this freer trade likely to affect manufacturers of skin creams in the US and the EU? Okay. This is something that you will have to read carefully. It has to do with your English ability as well as your economic ability, but just make sure that you've read this fully. Okay, if they remove this ban, it will essentially mean that the US manufacturers will be allowed now to produce these sun creams. Okay, so the US manufacturers will now be able to sell those creams to the people who are demanding them. So the US manufacturers would gain in this situation. The US tourists would then be buying from the US manufacturers, and so the European manufacturers would lose out in this situation because the US citizens wouldn't have to stock up anymore. Okay, so our answer would be B. Okay, and our last question. The table shows the trade in goods balance and the current account balance of the balance of payments for 4 countries during a year. Which country had the largest surplus on its trade in services, assuming no other transfers or income flows? Okay, so this is a matter of us knowing that current account is equal to trade in goods plus trade in services plus other transfers or income flows. Okay, so essentially, if we know that there are no other transfers or income flows, to find the trade in services, we would have the current account figure minus the trade in goods figure, and that will give us our trade in services figure. Okay, so Hong Kong, 6.2 minus 6.2 is 0, 4.3 minus 4.4 is negative 0.1, 7.6 minus 7.8 minus 0.2, and 5.4 minus 5.3 is a positive 0.1. So our answer for our last question is D. Okay guys, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. If you want any specific past papers done of the economics iGCSE syllabus, just pop a comment down below. Otherwise, like and subscribe for other past papers, and I'll see you guys in the next one.